Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Well, good morning and happy Monday. I'm Ryan Kalei Suji, joined by Yanji Denise, and this is Spotlight Hawaii on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. Glad to see so many of you starting your week out with us. This week we have a lot of different topics that we'll be discussing, but this morning we focus on the race for Congress.
That's right. Kai Kahele has made clear that he is running for governor and will vacate the seat that he holds now as representing Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District. A few people have stepped forward. Among them is Jill Tokuda, of course, former Hawaii state lawmaker, and also former candidate for lieutenant governor. So we want to welcome in Jill Tokuda to this conversation. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So as we noted at the top, the last time you were on here, you were talking about your candidacy for LG, but you switched races. Tell us about that decision.
You know, the last 8 months, we have been going throughout the state to communities, literally from Hilo to Hanalei. In fact, I'm on Kauai right now talking with you folks and really sitting and meeting with people, listening to their hopes, their fears, what they'd like to see for their families. And it was really clear for me that what we need in government at all levels is a strong champion for families. People who are going to put families first and make sure that the support that they need to really, be able to make it here in this wonderful place that we call home. That's what they're looking for, a fighter. And it was kind of funny, just to kind of take you back. My sons go to Kaneohe Elementary School, which is the same school that I went to. And they asked me to come and read a story for the school, and it was actually the biography of Patsy Mink. And I remember sitting on the hill and right in front of my old kindergarten class, and I was reading Patsy's story, and it was talking about how as many times as she fell, she picked herself back up again. She had an untraditional path to Congress. She was a mother, she was a community advocate. And while there's continued to be challenges put in her way, she fought because she knew that was the right thing to do. But more importantly as well, her perspective as a mother who would be there first and foremost for her family and her child really helped give her strength in terms of her voice in Congress. And as I was reading the book to the school and having it taped, it's one of those times when you realize, are you talking to them or are you talking to yourself? And the fact of the matter is Hawaii families across this country need a strong voice in Congress that's going to fight for them and get what they're going through because they're living that same very life. And so it was it was a quick decision for myself, but it really was about making sure that when we look at our congressional delegation, when folks look at who's representing us in Congress, they see themselves and that they'll know that they have a person in there that's going to really fight for their families because they are one of them.
And when you were making that decision, obviously you're going from a field where there were a number of candidates running for lieutenant governor, and there were, talks that this could be a very competitive race, very close. Now looking at this race, there are a few of you who have said that you're interested in it. How much of that played any role in this decision to kind of move and shift gears based on who you're going up against?
When I take a look at any race that I've run, whether it be lieutenant governor 4 years ago or, lieutenant governor this recent cycle as well, and now looking at Congress, it really isn't about looking at others in the field. It really is about what I'm going to be able to offer in that position and what I'm going to be able to offer the people of this state. And so I have no doubt that there could be a very crowded race ahead of me as well for Congressional District 2. And I think I welcome that, quite frankly. When you look at other races that I've run, it's been very competitive. But I think the winners in that are the people. Democracy thrives when people participate, including those who run for office. And so we've got a few more weeks before the filing deadline. And I anticipate that the run for CD2 to win the hearts and the minds of the voters in this district will be very strong and intense. And I'm really looking forward to having those kind of discussions and really giving people a choice to decide who is it that they want to represent them in Congress.
You know, in any elected office, of course, seniority is important, but nowhere
Mhm.
perhaps is that the case as much as in Washington. There's a question from Keala who says, will she promise us, if elected, that she will stay in Washington? It's very important that she stay. I think that a lot of folks were disappointed by Kaikahele's decision because it then brings Hawaii back to zero when it comes to seniority. What is your commitment to the voters of this district if you are elected to actually stay there for a significant amount of time?
Right. Thank you, Kayla, for that question. I've gotten quite a bit as I've gone out into the community and met with people in this race. My commitment is to the people of this state and a path to really fight hard and be an advocate for them in DC. And so I know for a fact that I want to be there as long as I can possibly be, serving in that capacity to add seniority to the delegation and strengthen the delegation. But I also recognize that first and foremost, I've got to earn that continuous vote and trust from the people of this state. And so as long as people will have me and as long as we can partner together to fight for Hawaii, I plan on being in DC to serve Hawaii.
We know also from just past interviews and hearing your story that you are a mother of two, that you have two sons. And then we've heard from Congressman Kahele as well as the challenges of trying to raise a young family in Washington, D.C. If given the opportunity to serve in Congress, how will you manage that on a personal level with your family back home in Hawaii? And that distance that could be between you and your family here in Hawaii and working abroad?
Well, I appreciate first and foremost that so many have asked me that question and they're worried about my sons and my husband. And I think it's because they know that at the heart of everything I've done, the advocacy I've done both in the state Senate and in the private sector working with nonprofits, it always has come back to family. And especially the experiences I've had with my own family as well and watching them grow up. And we had a lot of, very intense, honest conversations about this race from actually years ago when we talked about public service and what it might look like and where it may take me. And as a family in this race, we made the decision that the two boys and my husband, they would continue schooling here. And mom would come home every break she possibly could. Some may recall Representative Mark Takai, when he was in Congress, he would come home on weekends. He'd take that first flight he could out and be here for soccer games and then leave to go back to DC to do the work. Senator Brian Schatz does a very similar situation where he's back for every single break possible and time in the district he spends here at home. And when we looked at the calendar as a family, we really saw that this was something that was absolutely possible. And the bottom line is, our boys were born when I was in office in the Senate, which was just as rigorous, even if I was living right here at home. And we've been able to raise them as a family to know that no matter where we may be physically, I'm always there for them. And my husband and I know that together, it's always going to be difficult. I'm not going to lie. There's always going to be, parent guilt. But quite frankly, that exists no matter where you live, whether you're 5,000 miles away or right here at home. But my husband and I have agreed and we've talked about it. We're going to get through that together. And the bottom line is our kids will always feel that we're there for them. And I think that they know that. And so I feel really blessed that I have such strong support from my two sons and my husband and our extended family that have always stepped forward and stepped up to make sure that our kids are okay. So, it's very exciting to me and very heartfelt to know that I've got them right by my side.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about those conversations because Congressman Kaikahele did say that, initially his plan was to move the whole family to DC, and then they found that it was just not the circumstance that they wanted, and they decided that Hilo was a better place to raise their girls. Tell us a little bit about those conversations. Your sons are a little bit older, but still pretty young. For the viewers who don't know, we're talking about a 6th grader and an 8th grader, so that's still a pretty impressionable time and important time. And you're right, mom guilt exists no matter what, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or working full-time,
Yes.
That's always there. But tell us about what their input has been around the kitchen table about your decision.
I'll be honest, especially at this age, they're kind of excited about the opportunity to even for them be able to experience, significant amounts of time potentially in another state or a district, in this case, in the District of Columbia, but being able to experience something outside of Hawaii as well. And for our sons, it's always been just, again, very honest conversations about what life might look like and being okay with that. And, and they're very honest with me. If they don't like something, they're going to tell me. I will assure you of that they will tell me if they're not comfortable with the situation. But I think for us, it was also about creating some consistency for our boys, and we've always been very strong supporters of our public schools. In fact, the boys go to the same schools that we went to. Next year, we'll have a student at King and Castle High School. I'm not sure how that happened so quickly that I'm now raising a high schooler, but they're excited. They've got friends and they're pursuing different things. They do Boy Scouts. And so it really is about making sure that we create a stable, supportive environment for them. And they know, bottom line is, for band concerts and Boy Scout, events and things, mom will be home. And I think that's all part of the balance that we all go through in terms of managing our obligations and responsibilities professionally and personally. And to me, that's a strength. I know a lot of people are concerned about it. They might even say it's a weakness in some sense, but I really view that as a superpower, quite frankly, to know what it's like for everyday people to have to balance family life, personal life, and obligations of caregiving or being parents. And also making sure that they can be strong advocates and leaders within our communities and businesses. And so I think the experience I'm going through is not a whole lot different from what so many others right now are experiencing every single day.
Let's talk about some of the things happening in Washington, D.C. And when you just look at the makeup of Congress and the interaction that we're seeing now between both sides of the aisle, there seems to be just so much polarizing political figures, as well as just some outspoken members of Congress that have really caused a deeper division between the parties. What do you think the temperature is like if you had the opportunity to get to DC and have to navigate through what has become a very politicized and very political environment where it seems that both sides find very few common issues to find common ground on?
Yeah, it's a tough time everywhere right now. And I do think that, coming from Hawaii, where we've had to really learn how to work together, regardless of where we may stand on a partisan perspective, and even within our own parties, because we're such a close-knit community with very few degrees of separation. It really is about, even when you're disagreeing, you have to agree to disagree amicably and civilly, because you know that at some point you'll need to work together. You can't burn all those bridges. And I think in DC right now, you've got quite a hostile environment where you've got a lot of tension between parties, quite frankly, and even within the party itself. And I think it's essential that we kind of restore some of that civility, because at the end of the day, people really want to know that you care and you're fighting for them. And when they see our leaders fighting each other, they don't feel that you're looking out for their best interests. That's the bottom line. And I think by, creating, alliances and really being able to work together, whether it be as a result of, geographic connections and commonalities we have, or ideological ones. I think that's how, we as a state with 4 congressional delegates really become stronger as a whole in Congress. I think that's first and foremost what I would like to do, is really connect with those folks that I know can band together with me to make sure that we fight for what Hawaii needs. I think that's the most important thing at the end of the day, that with all the partisan divides, we see a lot of the rhetoric flying. People in Hawaii just deserve to have a champion that's going to fight for them and make sure that they get the support that they need here at home.
And sort of building on that, Randolph has a question which came to my mind as well, which is, how can you navigate in a likely Republican majority in the House next year? All indications are that there will be a Republican majority, and you'll be going in as a freshman, against a lot of people who are quite vocal in their opposition to your party. So how will you navigate that?
That's always a tough situation to consider, coming in as a minority member, coming in as a freshman as well. And I think that's where you've just got to be smart and realize that while we are dealing with partisan politics in Congress, it's also about people at the end of the day, and taking a look at where you can find alliances, even, across the aisle, to make sure that Hawaii really gets the help and support they need for those things that they care about. And we've got some big reauthorizations coming up in the next couple of years that are critical for Hawaii, both for education, K-12 Reauthorization Act, the Farm Bill is coming up for reauthorization in 2023. So many things we'll be looking at, even big bills that really provide supports, things like child care tax credit. A lot of these things, yes, might be pushed more from a Democratic perspective, but the bottom line is it helps all states. It helps Republicans and Democrats. And how can we make sure that we find those alliances, even across the aisle, to provide support for those things that will be beneficial for our people. And so it would be a daunting task to come in with a potential Republican majority, but it comes down to creating alliances and being willing to work with everyone, with every tool in your toolbox to be able to make sure Hawaii gets that support.
We have another question here asking if you could ask how you will work to protect the water supply. Of course, Red Hill continues to be an issue and one that Congress and our congressional delegation has dealt with directly. What are your thoughts on the situation at Red Hill moving forward, knowing that we know that the military has laid out its plan for defueling that facility? And beyond just Red Hill, what do you think the future for the military in Hawaii should be as we look at some of these leases that are up?
That's a great question, an important one. And I think, especially as we take a look at the impacts that this has had on our families, on our schools, and our surrounding community, it really is a crisis and a tragedy that should never have happened. And so first and foremost, we have to protect and we have to support all of those families that have been negatively impacted by this tragedy and this crisis. And we have to rectify that in absolutely every way possible. I think that holding people accountable and making sure that these things happen in a quick and timely fashion is critical. It really is about making sure that every measure is in place to make sure that this never happens again and that it is defueled and decommissioned in that way. And so I think accountability is critical, and that's what the congressional delegation needs to do, hold the military accountable to the actions that they commit to, and on a quick time frame as well, because families cannot wait, communities cannot wait. When it comes to taking a look at the military's presence in Hawaii, I believe that was also your second part of the question, Ryan, as well. I think that's where we need to, make sure that we have continuous conversations and dialogue and strong relationships between, Hawaii's government leaders, our community and private sector, and our military, in terms of looking at what is that path forward? How are we going to make sure that we're working together, we're communicating honestly and openly with each other so that we can make sure that the actions of the military and presence in Hawaii is a balanced one and takes into account respect and care for people here in Hawaii and communities as well. So I've always been a big proponent that while there are many situations that are crises, it really is about how we communicate and foster stronger relationships together throughout all times as well, that will really help to guide us and help navigate us through what could be, potential situations, challenges going forward, or as you mentioned, even lease negotiations. It starts with a strong relationship and honest and open communication as well.
There's a question here, and we know that rail is a city project, but there is some federal overlap. So Elizabeth wants to know, what is candidate Tokuda's position on rail? Will she seek or back additional federal support for the project? Of course, we're in the midst of trying to get the FTA funding that's already promised, but do you think there is room for more federal support of this? And what do you think of the mayor's plan to end it, at least for now, in Kaka'ako?
That's a great question, and it's one that's been around for quite some time as well. I support completing rail because I do believe it's about transportation equity. I believe it is something that really can be a huge benefit and boost for our working families throughout our state. Right now, just the cost of gas alone is really prohibitive for so many of our workers and our families right now to get to the workplace that they need to be able to put food on the table for their families. And rail really has the ability to be that equalizer in many ways. At the same time, as many know, I also believe we have to ensure the greatest and utmost amount of transparency and accountability when it comes to completing rail as well. And the tax dollars, and a bulk of it has come from the people of Hawaii. The fiduciary responsibility we have to taxpayers to make sure that this project is completed well and it is done right. That's the most important thing. I think as we develop plans that show that accountability, show that path forward in terms of how we're going to be able to complete rail, and I've supported going to Ala Moana Center because that's where you really are able to get the full maximum benefit for workers in our community, as well as fare box returns. I do think that there could be significant opportunities to go back and get additional funds from the federal government. But again, it has to be as part of a plan that really does show a strong path forward in terms of how we're going to be able to get it to where it needs to go to help the maximum number of folks that need it in our community, and doing it well with the dollars that we have available. So I guess it's a long answer to, I really do think that the federal government, there is an opportunity to get more money, to even get the current money we have, but we've got to really be able to provide them with a strong, solid path forward of how we're going to do it well and right, given our fiduciary responsibility we have to taxpayers.
This is a unique position in CD2 in that it represents the neighbor islands as well as some rural parts of the island of Oahu. And we know that the issues on the neighbor islands are far different from what is happening on the island of Oahu. As someone who has served in the legislature and served your community of the windward side of Oahu, but traveling and speaking to us from Kauai, what are some of the issues and some of the things that you are hearing from the neighbor island, things that are happening on the neighbor islands and how they differ from Oahu, and how you feel that you are qualified to be that voice for this neighbor island community?
Thanks, Brian. And you're absolutely right. I'm on Kauai today. I was in Kona yesterday. I'll be on Lanai on Wednesday, Maui on Thursday, and Hilo the following Monday. So definitely jumping around. And I was on Molokai 2 weeks ago. So yes, been going around to all the different islands and communities that are part of Congressional District 2, and listening and talking to people. And, it's interesting. The issues are often very similar. It's the approaches and the perspectives that are just somewhat unique. And I will tell you, housing is a really big concern in every single community that I've talked to, and talking with folks, whether it's a young family just starting out, wanting to buy their first home, or it's, retirees who are worried about where can I age with some dignity, and get some extra help that I might need. And so housing really has become a breaking point for so many in our communities right now. When you take a look at the fact that a starter home is probably over $1 million, no matter where you are right now. And there's situations where folks are coming in and offering 20 or 30% over asking price and paying cash. They feel that they've been priced out of this place that they call home. And so access to housing, and it's almost laughable to call it affordable these days, because affordable is not even affordable for most folks. But workforce housing, that's going to really be available to our families to be able to live and thrive in their communities. That's a big pain point for a lot of people right now. I will also tell you that especially in the communities that I have sat and talked with folks in over the last 8 months, literally, and especially here on the neighbor island communities, access to healthcare and mental health services, it's a big concern for people here. And this existed before the pandemic, but definitely been exacerbated throughout it as well. That access to care, sadly, has become dependent on your zip code. Where you're able to get that care sometimes means you have to fly or drive hours to go and get it. And you may not even be able to get it in a timely fashion when you really need it. And so as a mother, that really pains me to think about the fact that you really have to think hard and ahead to care for your family, to care for yourself and your loved ones. And that really should not be the case in our communities. That's something we've got to fight for, is making sure that every community, every family, no matter where they live, has the kind of access to healthcare and mental health services that they need to be able to have a good quality of life here. Let alone, first and foremost, as I said, a home that they can afford to live in. And really what you're seeing, especially when I was talking in Kona the other day and when I was in Hilo the other week, the reality is there's so many cost drivers right now that are really creating extreme pain points that are making people think twice about where they live. And so the fact that some folks have to drive from Hilo to Kona, the cost of gas right now alone is making it almost impossible for them to think about working, or how many days they work based upon the cost that it is to just commute anywhere from 2 to 3 hours each way, depending on the time of day or if they have to catch the bus. And so I think really there's so many other cost drivers out there in our communities that are creating unbearable pain points that are making them think about, whether they can afford to stay here or whether they have to leave. Cost of gas, cost of food, cost of housing, cost of childcare. And I think these are pain points that we have to immediately start to focus on in terms of providing relief so that families can just feel like they can catch a break and have some hope here of continuing to live in the state.
You know, at the top of the discussion this morning, we talked a lot about your personal life and being a mom and the calculation and decision that went into running for this office. But I'm interested to know your professional experience up until this point. You know, you spent a lot of time in the state legislature, and then now the last few years having worked in nonprofit in the private sector. What do you think in that experience has led you to this moment? Why is that the right experience for this job?
Mhm. You know, I definitely think it's a coupling of the experiences that I have had both in government and in the private sector as well. You know, 12 years in the state Senate, chairing committees like the Ways and Means Committee, the Education Committee, Agriculture, Labor, all of these different things have really allowed me to get close to not just where the resources are coming from, but also the opportunities we have to really maximize our relationship with the state, the counties, and the federal government to take care of our people. Because at the end of the day, people aren't really focused on where the money comes from or the color of the money, if it's federal or state or county. They just know that they want those programs and services. They want those supports. They want good schools. They want housing. You know, they want to be able to have good roads to drive on, a clean environment, water to drink, all of these very basic things. And government's got to work together to make sure that we can really deliver on that mission and promise to people. And I think my experience, you know, in the state Senate, working on various levels with some of these, some of the toughest committees, quite frankly, really has been able to prepare me to see what those opportunities are and to be able to navigate potential challenges as well. And in the private sector, running my own small business, being involved in the nonprofit community, and the last few years actually working with the state to track the billions of dollars that have come in from the federal government for pandemic assistance, you know, roughly $21 billion, seeing where the money is gone and where, quite frankly, the money is going to be running out in the next year or two. That's been a huge benefit to seeing, again, where the challenges and the pain points lie in our ability to execute these funds and get it directly to the people and businesses and groups and communities that need it most, but also where the opportunities lies as well in terms of where definitely we've had some gaps and where we could provide more resources that could really make the difference between are we just okay or are we able to thrive and come out of this pandemic even stronger than before. And so I think that melding of both public and private experiences are really critical to then going to Congress and DC and navigating both that situation of how to deal with the politics that exist there, but at the end of the day, make sure we bring it home for people.
You know, as we wrap up our time here, I'm just thinking forward to this, you know, upcoming election. When you think about the number of races that are up, you know, the governor, lieutenant governor, now we have CD2. We also have a Maui mayor's race. The entire House and Senate is up for grabs, as well as some key seats on the city council. What is your message to voters during this time where there's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of names getting out there? How do you feel that you can reach out to the voters out there and your message to those who may get overwhelmed by this upcoming election season?
That's a great point. And don't forget, Kauai also has a mayor's race. So just to toss that in with everything else you just mentioned, it's going to be a crowded year with plenty on the ballot. And I think for myself, I really hope that when people, you know, scroll down and they find my name on the ballot under Congressional District 2, I really hope that they know that I'll be a champion to fight to put families first in Congress and in Washington, D.C. But more importantly, I hope when they see my name, they see themselves, that they know that I'm really out there to fight for people, to fight for our families, to fight for all of our children, our two boys, Matt and Aiden, and everyone's children, to have a chance to be able to raise a family, have a career and a life right here in Hawaii. They can call this place home as well for generations to come. And that's really my hope and my message to people is that when you see my name, I want you to see yourself. I want you to see our shared vision and our hope for the future for this wonderful state. And while there's so many challenges that are before us, I also see a huge amount of opportunity, but only if we're really able to work together and to be able to push forward on that vision that we all want. And so that's my hope. And that's why I'm going out every single day into the community, talking with folks wherever they will have me, meeting them where they're at, because this race is about so much more than just us on the ballot. It's really about all of us, everyone out there.
Okay, Jill Tokuda, candidate for Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District. We appreciate all of your time this morning. We hope you have a great time on Kauai, and we appreciate you being here.
Aloha,
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you, Yunji, Ryan.
Thank you. Well, great to hear from her. And that was a really powerful thing to say, that she hopes that when they see her name on the ballot, they see themselves. You saw her there really trying to relate to people, presenting herself as a working mom, and talking about some of the challenges in making the decision to run for this office. You know, she has boys who are in 6th grade and 8th grade. And so that's a key point in a young person's life. And she said that they made that decision around the family table. Many discussions about what it will take for, if she is elected to this office, for mom to be away. But she says she's following the late Mark Takai model of flying home every weekend and trying to be very committed to both her family and to her job.
Yeah, and we no doubt that is going to be a question that she will continue to have to answer after the departure of Kaikahele from this seat to run for governor, citing that it was not a match for he and his family, and that he wants to be closer to home. And so there is some questions that are going to be popping up during this campaign for CD2 about longevity. You heard her say that she's committed to staying there as long as Hawaii wants her there. And we also got to hear her stance on a few of the things. She said that she supports rail, of course, and where it's at, but also believes that there are still federal dollars out there to assist with the project moving forward, but that there needs to be more transparency in the process. And allowing it to get to Ala Moana, understanding that the mayor has put forth this plan to Kaka'ako, but supporting the rail and the project itself, and also talking a little bit more about the military's role in Hawaii moving forward.
Right, and fighting for clean water after the Red Hill incident, and perhaps negotiating some of the leases that are coming up with other state lands that the military uses. Interesting also to hear her highlight her resume and her experience, more than 10 years at the state legislature, and then now working in the private sector. And I'm not sure if everyone is familiar, but she did have experience in the last few years helping to track those COVID dollars, as she noted there at the end. So she says that she has a good handle on where the money is and where it won't be in the next few years. But really, again and again, trying very hard to make herself relatable to the viewers and to the voters. And so we'll see if that strategy works. Another candidate for this race is Patrick Bronco. He represents the windward side, and he's going to be joining us in a few weeks. And of course, we are open to more candidates as they come forward in this race. On Wednesday, though, Ryan, we're talking to someone who already has a job in office.
That's right. We're going to be catching up with Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi to discuss some of the things that are happening here, get an update on the rail project, as we just were briefly talking about with the candidate Tokuda, as well as getting an update on some of the things that are happening here locally. COVID-19 continues to spread within our community. We see those numbers. Want to hear from the mayor about his thoughts about what's happening there and the progress that is being made on a number of other issues, including affordable housing and a number of key initiatives that he really put forth on his agenda heading into this second year. So a lot to catch up with the mayor on Wednesday. We hope we'll see you right back here for another episode and conversation with him then at 10:30 here on Spotlight Hawaii. Until then, take care and aloha.
Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.